In the neon-drenched landscape of the 1980s, when MTV ruled the airwaves and synthesizers painted sonic dreams, one band emerged from Liverpool's industrial shadows to capture hearts across the globe. Dead or Alive, with their infectious beats, androgynous beauty, and unapologetic flair, became more than just a musical act. They became symbols of a generation unafraid to blur the lines between fantasy and reality. But behind the glitter and glamour lay a story of triumph, tragedy, and the relentless pursuit of artistic immortality. Today, we uncover the untold chapters of a band that made us question everything we thought we knew about music, identity, and the price of fame. In the decaying industrial heartland of Liverpool, 1980. A young Pete Burns walked through streets, still echoing with the ghosts of the Beatles' legacy. Little did the world know that this flamboyant teenager, with his striking cheekbones and rebellious spirit, would soon ignite a musical revolution that would span decades. The city that had given birth to the Fab Four was about to witness the emergence of something entirely different, something that would challenge every convention of rock and roll. Pete Burns wasn't born to fit in. From his earliest days, he possessed an otherworldly quality that made heads turn and whispers follow. His childhood friend Mike Percy would later recall how Pete would spend hours in front of mirrors, not out of vanity, but as if he were channeling something greater than himself. He wasn't just looking at his reflection, Percy remembered years later. He was creating a character that didn't exist yet. The formation of Dead or Alive began not with grand plans or record label meetings, but in the cramped rehearsal spaces of Liverpool's underground music scene. Steve Coy, a drummer with precision that bordered on mechanical perfection, found himself drawn to Pete's magnetic energy. Wayne Hussey, before his later fame with The Mission, brought his guitar wizardry to the early incarnation. And Mike Percy, Pete's childhood companion, completed the original lineup that would evolve into the phenomenon we know today. But this wasn't just another band trying to make it big. From their first rehearsal, there was something electric in the air, a sense that they were crafting more than music. They were creating a new mythology, one that would blur the boundaries between performer and persona, between art and artifice. The truth no one dared to say was that Dead or Alive were never meant to be understood in conventional terms. They were meant to be experienced, felt, and remembered long after the last note faded, finally revealed through decades of archived footage and forgotten interviews. The true genius of Dead or Alive lay not just in their sound, but in their revolutionary approach to visual storytelling. Pete Burns didn't just sing songs, he inhabited them, transformed them, became them. In an era when most bands stood static behind their instruments, Dead or Alive turned every performance into a theatrical experience that left audiences questioning the very nature of reality. The early 1980s were a time of visual awakening. In popular music, MTV had just launched, hungry for content that could capture viewers' attention in ways radio never could. But while other artists scrambled to create simple performance videos, Pete Burns was already envisioning something far more ambitious. He studied the great performers of history, from David Bowie's shape-shifting personas to the dramatic flair of Klaus Noem, and synthesized their influences into something uniquely his own. Steve Coy, the band's rhythmic backbone, watched in fascination as Pete would spend hours before each performance, applying makeup with the precision of a surgeon and the passion of a painter. He wasn't putting on makeup, Coy would later reflect, he was putting on another soul. The transformation was so complete that even close friends would sometimes fail to recognize the person they thought they knew. The band's visual evolution became inseparable from their musical journey. Each album cycle brought new incarnations, new characters, new ways of challenging audiences' perceptions. Little did the world know that this constant reinvention wasn't just artistic choice, it was survival. In a music industry that demanded conformity, Dead or Alive chose revolution, again and again, regardless of the cost. Before they conquered the world's dance floors, Dead or Alive cut their teeth in Liverpool's legendary nightclub scene, a world that operated by its own rules and celebrated the beautiful misfits that mainstream society rejected. Eric's, the Cavern Club, and countless other venues became their proving grounds, where they learned that music was just one component of a larger theatrical experience. The Liverpool of the early 1980s was a city in transition. The economic depression had hit hard, leaving behind empty buildings and broken dreams. But from this desolation emerged one of the most vibrant underground music scenes in British history. Bands like Orchestral Manoeuvres in the Dark, Echo and the Bunnymen, and The Teardrop Explodes were redefining what popular music could be. And Dead or Alive found themselves at the center of this creative explosion. Pete Burns became a fixture in Liverpool's nightlife. His presence, both magnetic and controversial, club owner and scene veteran Roger Eagle would later describe those early performances when Pete took the stage. Everything else stopped. Conversations, drinks, even time itself seemed to pause. He had this ability to make everyone in the room complicit in his fantasy. The band's early setlists mixed their original compositions with audacious covers that no other group would dare attempt, but success in Liverpool's underground scene came with its own challenges. The more popular they became locally, the the more pressure mounted to either conform to industry standards or risk remaining forever provincial. The truth, no one dared to say, was that Dead or Alive faced a choice that would define their entire career: play it safe and blend in, or risk everything on a vision that might be too radical for mass consumption. Year 1984 would prove to be the crucible, in which Dead or Alive transformed from Liverpool scene favorites into global superstars. The creation of Sophisticated Boom Boom, their breakthrough album, was nothing short of musical alchemy, a process that combined Pete Burns' visionary vocals with cutting-edge production techniques that would influence dance music for decades to come. Producer Mike Stock, along with Matt Aitken and Pete Waterman, who would later become the legendary Stock, Aitken, Waterman production trio, first encountered Pete Burns at a time when both parties were searching for something revolutionary. The chemistry was immediate and electric. Stock would later recall that first meeting. Pete walked into the studio like he owned not just the room, but the entire building. He had this presence that filled every corner with possibility. The recording sessions for You, Spin Me Round Like a Record became the stuff of music industry legend. For days, the team worked to capture something that had never been attempted before, a perfect fusion of his own RG dance beats with pop sensibilities and Pete's otherworldly vocal delivery. The truth, no one dared to say, was that they were essentially inventing a new genre in real time, one that would later be called freestyle dance-pop. Little did the world know that the distinctive sound that would define Dead or Alive, that hypnotic blend of synthesized perfection and raw human emotion, came from countless hours of experimentation. Pete Burns would layer vocal take upon vocal take, not just for harmony, but to create an almost supernatural chorus of voices that seemed to emerge from another dimension entirely. Released in late 1984, You Spin Me Round Like a Record didn't just climb the charts, it rewrote the rules of what a pop song could be. The track's hypnotic rhythm, Pete Burns' distinctive vocals, and its revolutionary music video created a perfect storm that would influence popular culture for generations to come. But the journey to #1 was far from guaranteed, and the story behind its success reveals the precarious nature of artistic breakthrough. Song's distinctive opening, that immediately recognizable drum machine pattern that Steve Coy had programmed with mathematical precision, was actually born from a technical limitation. The studio's drum kit was broken, forcing the band to rely entirely on electronic percussion. What initially seemed like a setback became their signature sound. Finally, revealed through producer notes and studio logs, we now know that this accident was the key that unlocked their global appeal. The music video, directed by Vaughn Arnell, pushed boundaries that hadn't even been established yet. Pete Burns' transformation throughout the clip, from leather-clad rebel to ethereal being, captured audiences' imaginations in ways that pure performance never could. The video's budget was modest by today's standards, but its impact was immeasurable. MTV executives later admitted they weren't sure if the network should air it, given Pete's androgynous appearance and the video's surreal imagery, but the audiences knew exactly what they were seeing. Something unprecedented. Something that spoke to desires and dreams they didn't even know they had. The song's success wasn't just commercial, it was cultural. Suddenly, mainstream pop music had room for the mysterious, the androgynous, the beautifully strange. Little did the world know that Dead or Alive had just opened a door that could never be closed again. Success, as Dead or Alive would quickly discover, came with costs that no amount of preparation could anticipate. The transition from Liverpool's underground scene to international stardom brought pressure.